The day I was born, my mother threw herself from the hospital roof in front of everyone. For 20 years, my father and my brother, Ethan, hated me for it. They hated that my birth couldn't convince our mother to stay, but more than that, they hated her for what they saw as a cold, heartless choice to abandon them. For death. They were wrong. It was their betrayal and cold indifference that drove her to sever her ties with this world, to escape the system she was bound to. But they chose to channel their grief into the cruelest, most vicious treatment of me, as if their torment could somehow soften her heart in the afterlife and bring her back. On my 18th birthday, when I was being humiliated by a group of strangers, my brother Ethan stood in the crowd, a smirk on his face, and said, "She deserves it." On my 20th birthday, I climbed to the top of that same building. I had finally found my own way to leave this world. It was New Year's Day. I had just returned to my cramped, old apartment after a long shift at my part-time job. The lights were still off when my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. His voice was a blade of ice, but I could hear the familiar anger simmering just beneath the surface. "The whole family is here. Why aren't you back yet? Do you think you're so important that we need to send a personal invitation?" I kicked off my worn-out shoes, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Your whole family is there. What does that have to do with me?" Ethan's anger flared. "Pearl, don't push your luck." Before I could retort, a sickly sweet voice oozed through the receiver, dripping with false affection. It was Lily. "Pearlie, why aren't you home yet? Uncle and Ethan have been drinking for a while now. If you don't hurry, all the good food will be gone." She paused for dramatic effect, then giggled. "Oh, that's right. You go by Pearl now. My memory is just terrible, I always forget. You should hurry home, Pearl dear. You wouldn't want to make Ethan angry." Her saccharine tone made my stomach turn. I hadn't eaten in 2 days, and the emptiness in my gut churned violently. I couldn't stop the dry heaves that escaped my lips. A few seconds of dead silence on the other end of the line was followed by Ethan's voice, now thick with rage. "Who are you trying to disgust? You curse, you harbinger of death who killed your own mother. Go wherever you want. No one would care if you dropped dead in a gutter outside." I had to laugh, a hollow, broken sound. It was almost funny how he clung to this narrative. We all knew the truth about how our mother died, but Ethan insisted on laying the blame squarely on my shoulders. It was as if punishing me somehow lessened his own crushing guilt. He was a master of self-deception. Realizing no kindness would ever come from him, I frowned and moved to end the call. But just before my thumb hit the screen, Ethan's voice, tight with suppressed fury, cut through the line again. "Next month is the anniversary of Mom's death. If you have any conscience at all, you'll be there. 20 years. They never called it my birthday. It was always the anniversary of Mom's death. When I was little, I saw other children with cakes and presents on their birthdays. I once timidly asked my father for a small cake. He responded with a slap that sent me sprawling to the floor. My face swelled instantly, and a loose tooth wobbled in my mouth. His rage wasn't spent, he kicked me hard in the ribs. "A birthday? What right do you have to a birthday? If you weren't so useless, would your mother have left us?" I lay on the cold floor, the pain a dull throb that numbed my cheek. Ethan sat on the sofa nearby, his face a mask of indifference, watching me get beaten. Humiliation and pain washed over me in a tidal wave. Tears welled up in my eyes, but looking at my father's crazed expression, I didn't dare let them fall. After that, I never mentioned my birthday again. Instead, every year on that day, I would silently try to sketch my mother's face in my mind, imagining what my life would have been like if she were still here. It wasn't until I was older that I learned the truth. My mother, Aurora, came from another world. She was here on a mission, sent by a system to save my father, who was destined to be the tragic second male lead in this world story. If he had stubbornly pursued the story's original heroine, he would have ended up bankrupt and dead. Aurora appeared and stood by his side from high school onward. She did his errands, helped with his homework, and when he started his company, she begged everyone she knew for investments. During his darkest hour, she sold everything she owned, including her own property, to help him rebuild from nothing. After his heart was shattered by the heroine, it was Aurora who found him by the river, sitting silently with him until he was ready to speak. Finally, he relented and agreed to marry her. On their wedding day, the heroine showed up, attempting to lure him back into her orbit. But my father remained steadfast, his eyes only for Aurora. He married her. I've watched the wedding video in secret countless times. They looked so perfect, a handsome couple beaming with genuine happiness. Aurora even cried, saying to the crowd that she had decided to stay, that she wasn't leaving. A few years later, Ethan was born. His birth signified that my father had completely broken free from the original plot's control. They were supposed to live happily ever after. If only the story had ended there, it would have been a perfect fairy tale. But then, Evelyn returned from abroad. She was this world's original heroine. The same man who hadn't flinched when she appeared at his wedding began to waver when he learned her husband had died. He started bringing Evelyn home, again and again. Even after my mother made it clear she was uncomfortable with it. Evelyn's return was like a stone tossed into a calm lake, and the ripples of change began to spread. She started showing up at all hours, uninvited. On my parents' wedding anniversary, she faked a stomachache and insisted my father take her to the hospital. At the same time, she began to win over Ethan. My mother was strict with him, limiting his snacks and video games for his own good. But Evelyn would sneak him out for treats and fun. Whenever Aurora disciplined Ethan, Evelyn would swoop in, playing the part of the kind, understanding savior. As my father's company went public, Aurora worked tirelessly, often looking exhausted, a stark contrast to the always immaculately dressed Evelyn. A rift grew in Ethan's heart. He started calling Evelyn Mom and treated her daughter, Lily, like his own beloved sister. Then came the night my father, drunk, ended up in bed with Evelyn. My mother walked in on them. He swore nothing happened. But she only asked him one question. "You once told me that if you were with me, you would never think of her again. Does that promise still stand?" My father ran a hand through his hair, agitated and unable to meet her gaze. "She's in a pitiful state right now," he mumbled. "I can't just abandon her." "I told you I was from another world," Aurora said, her voice trembling. "If you have a change of heart, I will leave. Are you okay with that?" For some reason, this question enraged him. He hired men to watch her around the clock, turning their home into a prison. He forced her to get pregnant with me. The day he found out, his smile was triumphant and cruel. "Even if you no longer want me or Ethan," he sneered, "can you bear to leave a child in your womb?" For 10 months, he watched her every move through cameras installed all over the house. After she was gone, those same cameras became his only way to relive their time together, a masochistic loop of memory and regret. He was terrified she would kill herself, terrified she would actually leave, yet he couldn't bring himself to push Evelyn out of their lives. 10 months later, my mother, her body so frail it looked as if a strong gust of wind could blow it away, gave birth to me. While everyone rushed to coo over the newborn baby, she saw her chance. While the guards were distracted, she climbed to a high balcony in the hospital and leaped. The blood spread far and wide on the pavement below. In the hospital room, amidst my father's soul-tearing screams, only my cries echoed through the sterile air. In the aftermath, my father became more paranoid and twisted. He insisted on naming me Pearl, not as a term of endearment, but because he believed my birth had caused his vigilance to slip, giving my mother the opportunity she needed to escape. If it weren't for me, she would never have found the chance to jump. They placed the blame on an infant, while simultaneously resenting the mother who could be so heartless as to not even cast a single glance at her newborn daughter. After hanging up on Ethan, I lay on my bed, the gnawing emptiness in my stomach a constant reminder of my hunger. As darkness fell, my phone rang again. It was Chloe. Her vibrant voice was a welcome warmth. "Pearl. I made a ton of money at my gig today. It's New Year's, so your big sis is taking you out for a feast." She hung up before I could even reply. 20 minutes later, she was at my door. She knew where I kept the spare key hidden in a crack in the wall and let herself in. I hadn't turned on the lights to save electricity. In the pitch-black room, Chloe found my bed unerringly, gave my blanket a gentle shake, and grinned. "Rise and shine, sleepyhead. I'm taking you for barbecue." Chloe took me to a bustling restaurant downtown. She barely ate, instead piling my plate high with grilled meat. After I had eaten until I was stuffed, my stomach, unaccustomed to such rich food after 2 days of fasting, rebelled. I barely made it outside before I threw everything up. Chloe's face filled with concern as she watched me retch. She ran to a nearby convenience store and returned with a bottle of water. "You haven't been eating again, have you?" she asked softly. I wiped my mouth, feeling a rare pang of guilt. I had just managed to scrape together next semester's tuition, and my pay from the part-time job wouldn't come for another couple of days. Things had been a bit desperate. "Pearl, why don't you just move in with me? What if you get sick and there's no one around to take care of you?" Chloe had suggested this many times, but I always met her offer with silence. Seeing the undisguised worry on her face, I managed a weak smile. "It's okay. I'll be able to find my mom soon." "Your mom? But didn't she?" Chloe looked surprised. "She's still out there. Next month, I might finally be able to find her." She frowned, clearly not believing me, but she didn't press. Instead, she just gently rubbed my back to ease my nausea. "Well, until next month, at least stay with me. I don't want you forgetting to eat. You'll destroy your stomach." She spoke carefully, trying not to wound my pride. Ever since I turned 18 and my mother's system first contacted me, I had consciously started to put distance between myself and Chloe. She was the only person in this world who had ever been kind to me. I was terrified of how much it would hurt her when I left. So, whenever she asked me to move in, I could only respond with silence. When I didn't answer, Chloe sighed and smiled sadly. "All right. But you don't have classes for the next few days. Can I at least come see you?" I nodded weakly. Another wave of nausea hit me, and I doubled over at the curb, vomiting until my vision blurred. Through the haze, I caught a glimpse of movement across the street. My father and Ethan were leaving a fancy restaurant, followed by Evelyn and Lily. Lily was clinging to Ethan's arm, chattering animatedly. Evelyn was smiling, saying something to my father. The four of them looked like a perfectly happy family. A cold, inappropriate thought surfaced: I'm glad I didn't go home. It would have been far more pathetic to discover I'd been lied to while sitting all alone in that empty house. I numbly rinsed my mouth with water. Across the street, Ethan's head turned slightly. I think he saw me. He didn't say anything, just frowned at the sight of me huddled on the curb before turning and walking away without a word. Just like on my 18th birthday, he pretended he didn't know me. On the first morning of the new year, I was pulled from a deep sleep by a frantic banging on my old iron gate. I stumbled out of bed and opened the door to find Ethan's impatient face. "What took you so long?" he demanded. Before I could answer, he wrinkled his nose in disgust. "It stinks in here. You'd rather live in this dump than come home?" I stared at him, my face blank. "What do you want?" Ethan's anger simmered. "You weren't answering your phone. I came to see if you were dead." I rolled my eyes and started to close the door. "Not dead. You can go now." His anger exploded. He slammed the door open, his hand clamping around my wrist. "Don't you forget what next month is. If you want to play dead, at least wait until after the anniversary." A jolt went through me where he touched me. The warmth of his skin on my arm instantly dragged my mind back to that dark, terrifying night. When I came back to myself, the sharp sting on his cheek told me I had slapped him hard. He stared at me in disbelief, his hand raising instinctively to strike back, but he froze when he saw the raw fury in my bloodshot eyes. I shoved him out the door with all my strength, sending him stumbling backward. "Are you insane?" he roared, humiliated and enraged. I clasped my hands together, using every ounce of my will to stop my body from shaking. "I've been insane for a long time," I spat, a cold sneer twisting my lips. "Are you just now figuring that out?" I locked my eyes on his. "Ethan, you drove your own mother to her death. Are you trying to do the same to me now?" The accusation struck him dumb, his angry expression freezing on his face. "Get out," I whispered, my voice trembling with revulsion. "You disgust me." After slamming the rusty gate shut, I ran to the bathroom and turned on the tap, scrubbing furiously at the spot on my arm where he had touched me. The rough towel scraped against my skin, and under the harsh friction, the fragile, scarred tissue tore open once more. Fresh blood trickled from my wrist, staining the white porcelain sink red. It joined the network of more than a dozen faded scars that crisscrossed my skin, relics of past attempts to harm myself. I gripped the sink, gasping for air as the sight of the blood slowly brought me back to reality. Staring at my pale reflection in the mirror, I screamed. "System, come out. I know you're there. Show yourself." After a moment, a cool, mechanical voice echoed in my mind. "Pearl, what is it?" I swallowed hard, still panting. "I'll be 20 next month. Can you finally tell me how to leave this place?" There was a pause. When the system spoke again, I thought I detected a hint of hesitation in its usually emotionless tone. "Are you certain you want to leave? Even if the method will cause you pain?" I didn't answer. "If you wish," it continued, "I can help you change your current life. You don't have to leave." "I only have one question," I said, my voice low. "If I leave here, can I see my mother?" "Yes." The confirmation was all I needed. I sank to the floor, all the fight draining out of me. "I'm sure," I whispered. "I want to leave." Growing up, my relationship with Ethan wasn't always this broken. Compared to my father, who physically abused me, a brother who was merely cold seemed like a blessing. I was afraid of his icy demeanor, but I still instinctively tried to please him, hoping for a sliver of affection. Then Lily and her mother moved in. That's when I learned that Ethan wasn't a cold person at all. He could smile. He could pinch Lily's cheek affectionately and say, "As you wish, little princess." For her birthday, he would search all over town for her favorite raspberry cake. I had lived for almost 2 decades without ever tasting a birthday cake. It hurt, but I told myself it was because Lily was more likable. If I were just a little more obedient, a little better, maybe Ethan would be a good brother to me, too. My father kept a special room in the house, a shrine filled with everything related to my mother. I was forbidden from entering. Occasionally, I'd catch a glimpse of him inside, watching the surveillance footage from when she was pregnant with me. In the videos, she would sit alone in a corner, stroking her belly and crying silently. Even without a word, I could feel her despair radiating from the screen. After Evelyn and Lily moved in, my father stopped watching the videos. The room was permanently locked. For a while, seeing my father and brother acting somewhat normal, I foolishly thought they had changed. That illusion was shattered the next time I was beaten so badly. I couldn't get up from the floor. I realized then that no matter how normal they appeared on the surface, the paranoia and cruelty were etched into their bones. My role in the house was fixed. I was the maid and the punching bag. I endured their abuse, even the scornful looks from Lily, who would deliberately provoke me so our father would have an excuse to beat me. Sometimes, watching him with Evelyn and Lily, looking so much like a family, a fog of confusion would descend on me. How could the man who grieved my mother so violently allow others to trample all over their marriage? The first 18 years of my life were an inhuman existence in that house. I was constantly hungry, yet I learned to grovel for scraps of affection just to survive. It wasn't until the incident on my 18th birthday that I found the resolve to break away from them for good. I never set foot in that house again. That year, I used the money I'd earned from my job to buy my very first dress. It was a beautiful, sunny day. To save time, I took a shortcut through a narrow alley. After that day, I never saw the sun in the same way again. The greasy smell of a middle-aged man's cigarette smoke, his rough hands roaming over my body, they became shadows that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The next morning, I was lying broken in that alley. When the sun rose, it exposed my naked, battered body to the world. A crowd gathered. I could hear them murmuring, perhaps about me, perhaps in pity. I lifted my swollen eyelids and saw him in the crowd. Ethan. My injured body wouldn't move. I could only plead with my eyes, a broken whisper escaping my throat, brother. But he didn't move toward me. Instead, a mocking smile spread across his cold face. I heard his words clearly, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. She deserves it. Then he turned and walked away. I had always thought Ethan was just indifferent. I never knew he hated me that much. It was Chloe who finally broke through the crowd, covering me with her jacket and calling for help. The last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was her terrified face. When I woke up in the hospital, Chloe was still there. She cared for me until I recovered. It was then I learned she was an orphan, with no parents of her own. She took me to her small apartment, and from that day on, we became each other's family. A few days later, a strange voice echoed in my mind. It called itself the system. Its voice was cool and mechanical, but unlike Ethan's coldness, it felt strangely warm. Your mother, Aurora, gave much and lost much in this world, it said. She told me she had no regrets towards anyone here, except for you. She felt she owed you everything. When Aurora left, she had accumulated a vast amount of system points. She didn't use a single one. Instead, she exchanged all of them for a single wish, and she transferred that wish to you. When you turn 20, you can activate this wish at any time. Those words became a lifeline, a single ray of hope in my desolate existence. I began to yearn for my 20th birthday. Over the next 2 years, the system would appear occasionally, mostly to tell me stories about my mother. It told me of her turmoil during the 10 months she carried me, and of the unshakable resolve she had when she finally decided to leave. It told me that my mother was still alone in her world, and if I chose to go to her, she would be waiting. Can I really go to her world? I asked, my heart pounding. The system paused. Yes, it finally said. If that is still your wish on your 20th birthday, I will help you. On the day of the Lantern Festival, the system appeared again. Its mechanical voice was unchanged from the first time I heard it. 10 days until your 20th birthday. You can still reconsider your wish. I clutched my cramping stomach. My wish will never change. The system fell silent. That afternoon, Chloe got me a catering gig at a hotel. A company was holding its annual gala, and the pay for one night was more than I usually made in 2 weeks. When I arrived and changed into my uniform, I realized with a sinking heart that the gala was for Ethan's company. It was too late to leave. I tried to make myself as invisible as possible, melting into the background. But my luck ran out. As I was clearing a table, a spotlight suddenly hit me, pinning me in its glare. On stage, Lily's excited voice boomed from the speakers. Pearl, dear. You came after all. I thought you looked down on our family's company. You never show your face at these things. All eyes turned to me. She giggled. Oh, my bad. Pearl. I keep forgetting your new name. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lily continued, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. But Pearl, even if you hate us and didn't want to come home for the holidays, you didn't have to dress so shabbily. People might think Ethan abuses you. I said nothing, but I could hear the whispers around me. So that's CEO Joe's sister. I heard she was. Ugh, no wonder they threw her out. Look at what she's wearing. Is she trying to look pitiful? So manipulative. She has no shame. I ignored them and continued clearing the dirty glasses, my face a mask of indifference. Seeing she couldn't get a rise out of me, Lily pouted and moved on. Ethan's expression was as cold as ever, he seemed accustomed to watching me be humiliated. As the gala wound down, I noticed an oil stain on my uniform. With most of the work done, I decided to head to the staff room to change before going home. But before I could leave, Lily blocked my path, a smirking man in tow. Pearl, you look so lonely over here. Let me introduce you to someone to keep you company. She pushed the man towards me and then scurried away. The reek of alcohol hit me before he was even close. So, you're CEO Joe's sister? He slurred, his eyes raking over me. Not bad looking. A bit, skinny. He let out a foul-smelling burp, and goosebumps erupted all over my skin. He grabbed my hand. I instinctively snatched it back, trying to push him away, but I was too weak. Feisty, he chuckled. Heh, I like that. He became more aggressive, grabbing me in a hug. Don't play innocent, he whispered wetly in my ear. Ms. Lily told me you've been sleeping around since you were 15. Stop pretending, you take good care of me, and I'll make it worth your while. In that instant, the terrifying impulse returned. My vision blurred. The only thing that felt real was the violating touch of his hands on my body. I felt sick, about to vomit, but I couldn't break free from his grasp. My eyes darted around frantically and landed on a fork left on a nearby table. Without a second thought, I snatched it and plunged it into the man's side. A scream tore through the hall. By the time Ethan rushed over, I was a trembling mess, blindly stabbing the man again and again. Blood seeped through his expensive suit, pooling on the floor. People tried to pull me away but hesitated when they saw the madness in my eyes. Ethan, furious, slapped me across the face. I lost my balance and collapsed, the fork finally clattering from my hand. Can you stop being so crazy? He roared. I sat on the floor, gasping for air. I suppressed my trembling and managed a cold smile. Is this the first time you've realized I'm crazy, brother? At that word, Ethan's rage faltered. It had been 2 years, not since my 18th birthday, that I had last called him that. I stumbled out of the hotel in a daze and slept for what felt like an eternity. The 10 days passed in a blur. On the morning of my 20th birthday, the system's voice echoed in my mind as promised. It's been a while, Pearl. Have you decided on your birthday wish? I have, I said calmly from my bed. I want to leave this place. I want to see my mother. A moment later, the system's voice returned. I have consulted with Ms. Aurora. She is more than willing to accept you as her daughter again. As soon as this physical body perishes, you will be free to leave. So that's all it took. Death. It was that simple to go to her. I had suspected as much, but the confirmation was a relief. I couldn't help but smile. It was you all this time, wasn't it? Helping me. The cuts on my wrists that healed unnaturally fast, the ability to survive a week without food, the kind strangers who always seemed to appear when I needed them most. I was merely acting on Ms. Aurora's wishes. It is what I owe her. After her mission was complete, if I had been more insistent that she leave, none of this would have happened. I promised her I would look after you, but my permissions were limited. This was all I could do. I sighed. Knowing how to leave felt like a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I have some savings. Can you help me one last time? I will transfer the balance of your account to Ms. Chloe. Thank you, system. That afternoon, I went home. The beautiful villa had been a cold, dead shell ever since my mother left 20 years ago. It was a luxurious mausoleum. When I walked in, my father and Ethan were at the dining table. Upon seeing me, Ethan remained silent, but he couldn't meet my eyes. He looked, for the first time, guilty. My father, however, slammed his bowl on the table, his breath coming in ragged gasps. How dare you show your face today? Do you know what today is? It's the day you killed your mother. I hadn't been back in 5 years, and I suddenly noticed how much he had aged. Even his angry words lacked their former strength, they were the hollow threats of a weak man. I ignored him and walked straight to the balcony, hoisting myself up to sit on the railing. My father and Ethan followed, their faces etched with alarm. What do you think you're doing? They demanded in unison. I didn't have to come back, I said with a smile. I could die anywhere. I looked at them, my voice light. But there's something I wanted you to know. I'm going to see Mom soon. At these words, even the silent Ethan spoke up. What nonsense are you talking about? Compared to Ethan's strained composure, my father was apoplectic. What are you trying to do? Jump from here too? You think you can mock us by saying you have a system? Stop dreaming. I looked at his withered face and laughed. This was a wish my mother left for me. How pitiful. You didn't get one. After all, why would she give you a chance to see her again when she was willing to die just to get away from you? Seeing the twisted expressions on their faces, I felt a genuine, liberating joy for the first time. We all know the truth. Mom left because you two broke her heart. You made her lose all faith in this world, in you. She chose death over staying here. But all you could do was take your anger out on me. Because you're too cowardly to face your own guilt. And you, I said, my eyes locking on my father, you couldn't even mourn her properly before you brought Evelyn and her daughter into this house. It's a good thing Mom is dead. Otherwise, you would have killed her a second time with your hypocrisy. Ethan stood frozen, listening. My father was shaking with rage. Shut up. Shut up. You couldn't let go of Evelyn, so you hid behind the excuse that the plot was too strong. You knew you broke Mom's heart, but you refused to admit it. That's why you deserve to be unloved. You pretend to be strong with your violence, but it's just a cover for how weak and pathetic you truly are. An empty shell of a man. I'm not afraid of you anymore. And one more thing, I added, leaning back with a defiant grin. You think Lily is your own flesh and blood? Stop dreaming. You don't deserve a daughter. So now, you two cowards can stay in this world and continue playing the victim. I'm going to find my mother. With that, I leaned back and let myself fall. The last thing I saw was Ethan's face, contorted in a mask of horror as he lunged for me, a desperate, gut-wrenching scream tearing from his throat. So, he could make a face like that for me after all. The fall felt long, but my heart was filled with an infinite, profound peace. When I opened my eyes again, I was an infant. I heard my mother's voice, not from a recording, but real and warm beside my ear. System, is this my daughter? Yes. Her soul has been successfully transferred. My mother gently stroked my cheek. Her smile was soft, her voice the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Let's give you a name. How about Pearl? Aurora Pearl. You are my one and only precious Pearl. I snuggled into her arms and drifted into a peaceful sleep. From that moment on, my life was filled with light. Epilogue. Ethan. Only one person came to Pearl's funeral, Chloe. The woman looked rough around the edges, like she'd seen her share of trouble. I had no idea where Pearl had met someone like her. In the funeral hall, she stared daggers at me, then looked at Pearl's portrait and wept until she nearly collapsed. My father didn't come. But since Pearl's death, his hair had turned completely white overnight. We never spoke of her again, just as we hadn't for years. It was as if she had never existed. I often tried to recall my mother's face, but she had been gone so long her features were a blur. Yet, when Pearl sat on that balcony, smiling, my mind flashed back 20 years. I saw my mother in her thin hospital gown, her body weak, leaping from the rooftop. She had been smiling then, too. Even after her body was shattered on the pavement, you could still see the faint trace of a smile on her lips. She had abandoned us so cruelly, yet she left with a smile. After that day, I was plagued by nightmares. Sometimes I dreamed of her playing with me as a child, other times, I saw the despair on her face. During her pregnancy. Gradually, just like my father, I shifted the blame onto Pearl. I blamed her for not being enough to hold our mother's heart. After her death, I went to her apartment to collect her things. The same foul smell hit me when I opened the door. I walked in, wanting to open a window, but then I realized the tiny, squalid room didn't have one. Pearl had lived there for 3 years, and all her worldly possessions fit into a single small suitcase. While Lily and her mother lived in luxury in our home, Pearl had lived like a rat in a sewer. I remembered my father once mentioning that the labor had been difficult, but Aurora had insisted on giving birth to Pearl. The child she fought to bring into this world was the same one we had tortured for nearly 20 years. The little girl who would tug on my sleeve and call me brother, no matter how much I ignored her, had really died in that alley when she was 15. When I got home, Lily asked if she could have Pearl's room for a piano. She already had the largest bedroom in the house, but her greed was insatiable. For the first time, I lost my temper with her. You have 3 days, I said, my voice cold. Get out of my house. My father also ordered a DNA test for Lily. It would have been so simple to confirm if she was his blood relative, but no one had ever bothered. Or perhaps, we were just too lazy to face the truth. After the results came back, Evelyn and Lily vanished from our world. I made a few calls, pulled a few strings. The car they left in disappeared on a remote road. Perhaps they were now in some small, lawless country in Southeast Asia. After it was done, I told my father I wanted to find Mom, too. His face was shrouded in shadow, his expression unreadable. He didn't say a word, just lay back in his armchair, staring at the empty wall where his wedding portrait with Mom used to hang. Pearl was right. He was a weak, pathetic man. After settling all my affairs, I went to the same balcony and stepped off the edge. The wind screamed in my ears, and the searing pain of impact made me wonder if this is what Pearl had felt. When my consciousness returned, I saw them. Pearl and my mother. They were standing on a street corner. Pearl was a little girl again, maybe 3 or 4 years old. She was holding an ice cream cone, her face lit up with a joyous smile. It was the first time I had ever seen the child version of Pearl smile. In my memory, she was always a thin, quiet girl covered in bruises. I couldn't recall her ever laughing. A breeze blew, and Pearl's head turned in my direction. She froze for a second, and then a sweet, radiant smile spread across her face. "Brother," she called out. My heart leaped. An overwhelming wave of joy washed over me. I tried to run to her, to answer her call, but my body was frozen in place. A figure shimmered and walked right through me. A handsome young boy went to her side and naturally took her hand. "Don't eat too much ice cream," he said gently. "You'll get a stomachache." Pearl looked up at him and finished the cone in 3 quick bites. "System brother," she giggled, "you look so handsome when you're a person." The boy's cheeks flushed, and he turned his head away. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw him glance in my direction, a mocking smile on his lips. But when I looked again, there was nothing. I had become a ghost, unable to even move freely. And so, I could only watch as he took my mother's hand with one of his, and Pearl's with the other. They walked away from me, a perfect family of 3. And none of them ever looked back.